everybody. How you doing? Welcome to the Otherppl show. My name is Brad Listi here in Los Angeles, California. It's nice to be with you. I hope you're okay out there. Thanks for tuning in. Today on the program, my guest is Chelsea Martin, author of the new novel entitled Tell Me I'm an Artist.
It's kind of complicated. I do like being funny. I feel like it's kind of a crutch in writing, and especially from doing readings and stuff. It's like a quick way to like sense approval, as if someone laughs or is like, this is so funny. So I think that kind of like, I don't know, my insecurity feeds on that and wants that approval. So I think that's part of it. I also think like it can be kind of a distraction from like sloppy ideas or something. If you're inserting a little joke, like it kind of, I don't know. So I actually was trying to be less funny in this book.
Okay, that was Chelsea Martin. Her new novel, Tell Me I'm an Artist, is available now from Soft Skull. I believe this is Chelsea's third time on the Otherppl show. We have gotten to know each other a bit over the years, and I'm such a fan of hers. She's so smart, and she is such a funny person. I don't care what she says. She's hilarious. And she's just a very gifted artist. I feel like this new novel of hers should be her breakout book. Tell Me I'm an Artist is funny, smart, big-hearted. It's a book about a young woman from a hardscrabble upbringing who finds herself in art school in San Francisco. It's a coming-of-age story. It's a story about female friendship. It's about class. It's about family. It's about the act of creation, the making of art itself. And it does such a great job of capturing the idealism and the privilege and the many absurdities of the art school experience, which, as I was reading this book, I realized what great fodder for satire and humor art school is. It's a very ripe environment. Tell Me I'm an Artist is also a book that asks important questions about what makes a person an artist in the first place, and who in our society has the opportunity to make art. My conversation with Chelsea Martin is coming up in just a bit. Today's episode is brought to you by the Feminist Press, publisher of a new story collection by Luke Danny Blue called Pretend It's My Body. Pretend It's My Body is Luke's debut. It is informed by their experiences in and between genders. This debut story collection blurs fantasy and reality, excavating new meanings from our varied dysphorias. Luke Danny Blue invites the reader into a world of outlier lives made central and magical thinking made real. This collection is surreal, darkly funny, and always deeply felt. Pretend It's My Body is bound together by the act of searching for a spark of recognition and a story of one's own. That's Pretend It's My Body, the debut story collection by Luke Danny Blue, available now from the Feminist Press. So quickly, I just want to offer up a few orders of business. I do an email newsletter every week, once a week. And if you want to sign up for that, it's free. You can do so at otherppl.com or bradlisti.com. It's the same newsletter in both places. The newsletter is pretty straightforward. It's just a list, really, of things that I've been reading or that I'm interested in. I share stuff once a week. I will not bombard you with emails. So sign up for the newsletter if you are so inclined. This podcast is offered freely. It's a free show, almost 800 episodes and counting, and I make all of it, the entire archive, available to listeners free of charge. So it is a listener-supported show, and I'm counting on regular listeners to help keep the show going. You can support this show for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/otherpplpod. That's Patreon, Patreon patreon.com/otherpplpod. You can support the show for $1 a month, $3, $5, $10, $20, whatever you can swing. And as you move up the scale, you can get stuff. There's Otherppl merch, t-shirt, tote bag, coffee mug, sticker, book club subscription. I will send you a postcard in the mail, and so on and so forth. Patreon.com/otherpplpod. Likewise, if you would like to take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show, it really helps. So wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and so on, please take the time to go rate and review the show. It helps new listeners find the show. The more ratings that I get, the better the show does in the algorithm. You know what I mean. So please rate and review the show. Last but not least, I have a book out. It's a novel. It's called Be Brief and Tell Them Everything. It is available in trade paperback, ebook, and audiobook editions. I narrate the audiobook. So if you want to check that out, go track it down wherever you get your books. So my guest, once again, is Chelsea Martin. Her new novel, Tell Me I'm an Artist, is available now from Soft Skull. Chelsea's other books include the essay collection Caca Dolce and a novella called Mickey. It is always a pleasure to talk with her, and this new novel of hers is just fantastic. I'm very excited to get to share this conversation with you right now. Here she is, folks. This is Chelsea Martin, and her new novel, one more time, is called Tell Me I'm an Artist.
I try to work in here. I a lot of times end up on the couch or in bed when I'm actually like in writing zone.
I feel like that's kind of a thing. Like I've been better, like ever since I injured my knee. I don't know if you know this, but I broke my kneecap in April.
Yeah.
And I was sort of forced to lie down in bed. You know, like I had to kind of recuperate after surgery and everything. And normally I would be in my office either sitting at my desk or standing at my stand-up desk, but I got into the habit of writing while either in bed or in a recliner, and I'm kind of still doing it. It's nice to just relax.
It doesn't interrupt your sleep. Like, they say, like, sleep hygiene, like, spending time in your bedroom or something when you're just doing awake activities will, like, harm your ability to fall asleep easily.
You know, I don't know. I don't know if it's harmed my ability to fall asleep, but it's harmed my ability maybe to stay asleep. Like I wake up in the night a lot, but I think part of it is that my knee kind of hurts. So I just, I get uncomfortable. Like last night I woke up at 2.
It still wakes you up?
Yeah. Or But I mean, it's not even that. It might just be like I ate too much dessert or something.
Yeah.
I'm getting old. You just wake up for no reason. But I was up from like 2 to 5. I'm often up from 2 to 5, which isn't great.
Yeah, I do that too. Well, I sleep with my son Casper, so he wakes me up, and then I'll often just not be able to go back to sleep.
You sleep with him a lot? Because I do that too with River. Like we have to sleep. Like I don't know how much you want to talk about this, but like both of our sons have epilepsy, which we've bonded over, and like this is something I try to explain. My parents are like, "Are you sleeping with him a lot? Like, why are you sleeping with him all the time?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you got to understand, if he sleeps in his own room, we have a monitor on him, like one of those video monitors. And every time he makes a peep, I jump up in the night. So it's like, it's almost better just for one of us to sleep with him, because then we'll be able to actually sleep."
Yeah. I mean, it's such a comfort if I wake up and I can just check that he's okay and breathing and just sleeping normally. I think I would have to get up and go check on him constantly. Yeah. If we weren't sleeping together. So, but yeah, it's hard because he is a toddler. So he's just moving around a lot. You know, puts his legs over my face, things like that. It's not very comfortable.
Here's what I've discovered. I have discovered that if you put, I don't know how big your bed is, but if you have like a queen or a king size bed, I put a pillow in between us as like a divider, and it sort of helps with like the kicking.
Okay, I'll try that.
Yeah, you might want to try that strategy. But
we tend to just like spiral around the whole bed. Just like he moves toward me and then I'll move away and we just go in a circle. Yeah. Like our heads end up at the foot of the bed and then at the side of the bed.
So are you sleeping though? I mean, have you found a way to sort of like work through it?
Yeah, like Xanax and weed mints and things.
Yeah, I just talked to Timothy Willis Sanders, and he got me onto this ashwagandha. It's like some sort of nootropic herb. It's supposed to relax you, so you might want to throw that into the mix. That and like roseola, rhodiola rosea, and a mushroom called lion's mane, which is not like psychedelic, but is like supposedly relaxing or something.
Okay, like a powdered.
Yeah, you can get it. You can get it in like a capsule. It's like, one of these earthy remedy type things.
That seems cool to try.
I tried the ashwagandha, and you have to sort of figure out what your dosage is. It's different for everybody. And I took one the other day before a social function. It wasn't even that social. I was just going to be hanging out with family. But I was like, okay, this will be a good time to try it.
No.
I did not, I got to be honest, I didn't notice much of a difference. But I did make it through. I didn't have like any super difficult like internal battles or anything. Sometimes it can be sort of stressful, but I felt like it was fine.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's something.
Well, I want to congratulate you on this lovely novel. This is your first novel?
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And has it been something that you've been like struggling towards, or is this just the way it worked out and this is the first time you gave it a shot?
I think I just had some kind of, I don't know, notion that I didn't want to write a novel for a long time, or that it was too mainstream of an object. So
versus what? Versus like essays and short stories?
I guess so. Yeah, just more experimental forms.
And this though, I mean, I do feel like this. I always think about a book when I'm admiring it, like how it's put together, especially like a long narrative. And there are some traditional, and I don't say this in like a pejorative sense, but just like traditional narrative plot things or framing the narrative. I mean, this is an art school narrative, I guess you could call it. And your protagonist is telling the story of her life and times in this art school environment over the course of a semester, correct?
Yeah.
So you have that time framework, which I sort of noticed. And then I'm also working on a book of my own right now that feels kind of unwieldy because it's in the early stages. And so I'm like, whatever I'm reading, I'm like, tell me how to do this again. Like, what do I do? And one of the things I noticed about your book is that you have like a cast of characters, which of course is maybe the most like elemental thing about a novel. But you're kind of limited. You sort of defined your character universe. And I guess in an art school environment, you could potentially go crazy and have like 30 characters because there are so many different people that you're interacting with in a school environment. Was that something that you contended with in early drafts? Like, did you find yourself like, oh, I could mention this character or person or whatever, but did you get to a point where you're like, you know what, there's too many, I need to cut this down and maybe combine characters into one person so that the reader doesn't get lost?
Yeah, I did cut a couple characters, but I also was just really nervous about having, I don't know, art school has so many characters in it, and it's really easy to make that very cartoony, and having all of these wild personalities clashing just felt like a dangerous thing to attempt. So I really tried to limit it to just a few core characters and then try to show the larger art school scene in just kind of impersonal glimpses.
Right. I think it's a wise choice. I mean, this is a film. This is a book and a story about female friendship. So you have your main character, Joelle Barry, and I love your character naming is like so good. I love that when I'm just like, yes, that's exactly the right name for this character. So there's Joelle or Joey, her best friend, Suze, is a huge part of the book, and then Suze's roommate Diana, to a lesser degree, but kind of more and more so as the book continues towards its end. And then there are like a couple dudes, like maybe love interests, but not really, kind of.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to think. Then there's like the guy. What's the Egyptian guy's name who is the sort of cheerleader for the Alan for the art school, who's constantly like smiling and getting in Joelle's face and trying to like rally her or something.
Yes.
But teacher-wise, there's not a lot of that. It's really, you've kind of narrowed it down to like the intimate particulars of Joelle's life as a student. And then concurrently, there is a narrative that has its own energy and momentum that is at a remove from art school, but has to do with Joelle's family life, which is difficult and dramatic. And right. I feel like is the heart of the book.
Cool. Yeah. So she's going through all this. I mean, her family is going through kind of like a personal crisis, I guess. And so she's at art school hearing about it and being asked to help in various ways. And she's got to, I guess, choose which problems she's going to be concerned with, her art school problems or her family-created family problems.
Well, it's a book about class as much as it is about art. I mean, it's about both, but I think it asks a very important question, which is like, who has permission to be creative and to make art in this society as presently constituted? And it's a question that's well worth asking and maybe doesn't get asked enough because, you know, when it comes to the literary world, for sure, the sort of unspoken truth of it all, or often unspoken truth, is that it's a world of privilege.
Yeah.
I always like joke. I mean, like if you ever want to, like an indicator of just how like cushy in a way the publishing industry is, though I guess like there's also, you can also counter this with like how everyone's fleeing the publishing industry because nobody's getting paid and they can't afford to do it, even though they love it because they don't, you know.
So depressing.
Yeah, but I don't know. I always feel like, you know, the publishing industry, whenever I send out an email, I get back at least like, no matter what, I'll get back at least like 5. If I send out a group email to people in publishing, at least 5 of them will be on vacation at any time. And I'm just like, how does this work? They're always out at the office, you know, constantly on vacation. But it is, you know, these tensions that you describe for Joelle between her ambitions as an artist and her ambitions to sort of transcend the difficulties of her upbringing, the poverty of it, the economic hardship of it, but also the relational aspects of it, you know, having like an overstressed mom who has been raising 2 daughters and who is drinking too much, and then having a sister who is gifted but has her own battles with substance and who's kind of gone off the rails and also has a baby. You know, that's kind of the setup for Joelle. And, you know, it was, I think it was really interesting to me to see her grappling with questions of responsibility. You know, this familial responsibility that she feels like weighed against a responsibility to like her own dreams. And it forces the reader, and I think this is what you were trying to confront too, is it forces the reader to be like, well, how important is one's dreams? And in particular, if they are artistic dreams.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think somebody who maybe is in a position of greater privilege doesn't have to ask that question. They just pursue their little fantasy.
Yeah, or they have more positive feedback in their life about the value of art or the value of doing creative things. And I think also, I don't know, the conversation around class is usually just really limited to money and the financial aspect of that. And I really wanted to talk more about, you know, the repercussions of having less money and how having fewer resources can just have these snowball effects in your life where you don't think you deserve certain things or you don't have an outlet for certain ideas or whatever.
Well, and I think there are some scenes that are particularly moving to me where Joelle is candid with her friends. Yeah, I think for the first time, or you know, for a few times, you know, where she's kind of starting to be honest about who she is and where she's from with these people who are of greater means, greater resources, greater privilege.
Yeah, and that's like a big challenge for her too, is to try to be on a real honest level with her friends who she doesn't believe would ever understand.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, because I think in life, maybe like the common idea is that you should just be yourself and say who you are, and people will accept you. But then if you have like a heavy reality, you know, like you have you came from difficult circumstances, or you have a family that's like riddled with addiction and economic hardship, and you're talking to people that you're friends with, and you sort of lay it on them.
Yeah.
The truth is that it doesn't always pan out well.
Right.
You know, like sometimes people go, oh, that's too much for me, you know, and they don't have like, I always say this with like an eye roll, but they don't have the bandwidth for it, you know.
Right. Or they don't understand the gravity. I don't know. I feel like I've experienced that a lot lately too with epilepsy stuff. Like I don't know how much to say to people or how much they want to hear about it. And I feel like it's hard to get people on, I don't know, in a way, and like have a conversation I feel good about.
Yeah, I hear you. Like with regard to like my son's epilepsy and disabilities, is that like people will be like, well, how you doing? And you go, like in my head, I'm like, do you really want to know?
Yeah.
Like, do you want the truth, or do you want me to just say fine? Like,
right.
I think they just want you to say fine, or like things are okay, you know, we're working through some stuff, but it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And they go, okay, because then that doesn't involve them.
But it makes me wonder how I fail with things like that too. If people have reached out to me and I just don't make the effort to get it or something. It's pretty eye-opening actually to be on this side of something so serious.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's like, it's worth reminding myself like how often like we all fail to like be there for each other, or to like see each other even, you know. I think sometimes people fail to be there just because they just don't know. Everyone's so caught up in their own shit, you know, like it's very easy to sort of miss what's going on even with people that you're close to. But
it's almost just like the I don't know, the standard. Everyone's just kind of minimally noticing each other, I feel like. I don't know. It takes a lot of effort to really connect.
It does. Maybe like more and more so as you get older. Do you feel like...
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Do you feel like has this made you better at it or anything? I guess you're more tuned to it when you're dealing with something heavy. Maybe it hopefully makes you more empathetic. But maybe you're just so overwhelmed with your own stuff that you miss stuff even more.
Yeah, I feel like it might be that. I feel like I might have even less bandwidth than I ever did for other people's hard things. Not that I don't want to be there for them, but it's just, I don't know. It's just a lot. I don't know.
Well, it's funny because, you know, Joelle sort of has a similar situation happening for her in the book, where she's got like the demands of her social life and her art school, and just like just wanting to have a life of her own and to sort herself out at the age that she's at, which is very normal. I mean, what is she? I don't know how old she is when she goes off. 18? Is that?
I think she's 20.
20
in the book.
Okay, so 20, but like that's the age to go and want to sort of carve out some space for yourself and figure out who you are. And yet she has this pull back to her hometown in the Central Valley of California. Is that right?
In the north.
In the north. So it's called Lodi?
Yeah.
And it's like a small town that she's from. And, you know, her mom is there. Her sister is sometimes there. And she is confronted throughout the book with like these moral quandaries, you know, because her mom's like, you know, I've got your sister's baby. His name's Brian. I've got to get to work. I don't know where your sister is. Someone needs to watch him. And Joelle's like, I can't be there. I got school.
She's like, I have drawing class.
Yeah, I got drawing class. And yet, like, as a reader, I was like, yeah, you do. Like, why are you responsible as a 20-year-old to sort of come in and save the day? Like, you deserve to have your own time. But then there's also but what about this baby? You know, I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, I think there isn't really a clear answer. And I didn't want to draw a clear answer in the book because I think it's just a very difficult question that, I mean, I do think family is important, and I do think you should be there for each other when the need is there. But I also think that maybe Joey's being taken advantage of a little bit. So I think kind of one of the impetuses of the book is her growth in like being able to separate from her family and make the choices for herself.
And have some boundaries.
Yeah, and have boundaries and be able to be okay with those boundaries.
So another narrative thread that you're weaving, in this book, again, the time frame is over the course of a semester, and Joey's in a film class. I mean, she's a visual artist, she draws, but I think she takes a film class to be with her friend Suze, right?
Mm-hmm.
And her semester project that she's working toward throughout the course of the book is really funny. She is going to recreate on video, I guess, the movie Rushmore, even though she's never seen it. And that's like the Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah, and it's a self-portrait also.
And it's a self-portrait. And I want to talk about why you picked the movie Rushmore. And have you seen it?
I have not seen Rushmore. It was actually an idea I had just like for myself at one point, like years and years ago, like maybe 12 years ago. I think I was out of school, but I was like, that would be funny to try to recreate a movie that I've never seen. And then I quickly was like, that's so stupid. That would never work and wouldn't mean anything. But it stuck in my head for some reason, and it was always Rushmore. I never even considered another movie for it.
And you have not seen it?
No, I feel like Rushmore is just kind of like one of those movies where every arty person has seen it and loves it or something. And I've just always been repelled by that.
Okay, because I think it's a deft choice. And I'm sort of surprised that you haven't even seen it out of curiosity, having written this book. Or maybe it's kind of part of the discipline that you undertook to write the book. You can't see it. You would be like cheating or something.
Yeah.
But like the more that I read the book and the more that I kind of grappled with what it was trying to deal with, it's the perfect movie because, like you say, it's this twee, arty, beloved. It's a great movie. I mean, I love the movie, but I also understand why you would be repelled by it for the reasons that you described, but also because Rushmore speaks to Rushmore's dealing with similar themes. It speaks to a kind of privilege, but its protagonist is from sort of the wrong side of the tracks, even though he's played by somebody, Jason Schwartzman, who's decidedly from the right side of the tracks,
right,
as you talk about. And it was actually something great that you point out where you're like, what did you say? Something about his eyes, which have like never
seen pain.
Never seen pain, yeah.
Poor Jason. That's probably not true.
I'm sure he's been through some stuff, and everybody's got pain somewhere. But, it's a private school. It's like all these people to the man are born in their blue blazers, and it's Wes Anderson, so it's like hyper stylized and like, every outfit is super curated, and I can find myself sort of recoiling from some of that. It's too much for me, but
yeah,
if I'm being totally candid, I think it's probably my favorite movie of his. Maybe the Tenenbaums too, but I like this one because I think it has the most heart or something. I really like. He's the son of a barber, I think I like his dad. I forget the name of the actor who plays his dad, but he's like this sweet guy named Bert. Anyway, I know you haven't seen it, but you spend basically the entire book detailing Joey's procrastination around this project and her rumination about it. And it felt very true to life to me. Like, who among us who identifies as some kind of artist hasn't just let something drag forever and procrastinate? I mean, I procrastinate every day with my writing.
Oh, yeah.
I think most of us do. Like, there's so much. I mean, if you think about the amount of time we spend thinking about working and why we're not working and distracting ourselves with Netflix and video games and bullshit. It's like, it's the ratio has got to be pretty lopsided.
God, it's horrifying. I don't even want to think about it. But I'm also kind of, I don't know. I mean, I'm interested obviously in like the procrastination and the lows of the artistic process and getting through that lack of confidence in your ideas and the execution and stuff. So having a semester long just procrastination seemed like an interesting challenge to do, to like try to show these little peaks of confidence are like, oh yeah, this will work out, or I know the direction now, and then back to, oh God, no, I can't possibly do this. This is demented.
Well, that happens though. I mean, for me anyway, it's like it's one of the most humiliating parts of writing a book is having a day where you're like almost like manic with excitement because you feel like you've got it.
Yeah.
Or you have like a good day, you know, you're like, oh my God, this is it. And then the next day you like reread it and you're like, this is fucking terrible. Like, it just makes you feel so disoriented. You're like, I don't know. You can't, it's hard to trust yourself.
Yeah. And you just have to keep working through it, which is the hardest thing in my experience, is trying to get through those lows of like feeling like I just wasted 5 months writing this and it's all garbage. I have to start over, finding a way to be okay with that, or to get past that and work through it.
Was that the case with Tell Me I'm an Artist? Like, did you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote this over 5 years, I think. So I had so many points where I wanted to give up, or didn't know where to take it, or, you know, had stuff going on in my life that was very distracting. So, yeah, I mean, it was cool to have an outlet for those kind of thoughts too while writing it. Like, if I was feeling really stuck, it was an opportunity to kind of explore that feeling and dissect it in a productive way.
I was going to say, it's like the perfect book to be writing. Like even your shitty days are like fodder.
Yeah, it was. And also, you know, all the days where you're like, there's so many things happening in the world. How could I be just sitting down to focus on writing a novel right now? Like, that's also fodder for the guilt Joey's feeling, and like how to believe in yourself doing something that maybe outwardly seems really silly.
Well, that's, you know, I just had this thought or conversation yesterday. I was talking to a friend of mine who's also a writer, and I've had it so many times. It's like, why are we doing this? Like, it's so much work for, let's be honest, like most of the time, so little reward, at least financially. And it's kind of out of whack, and yet we can't stop. I don't think anybody who really is into this, I don't think that you can. Maybe for a while you can. And I don't mean to sound precious about it, but I just know from experience and from my friends, like, people just, one way or another, you're going to come back to it and you're going to try to write something because you just can't not do it.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very mysterious feeling.
Do you feel like, I sometimes half joke that it's a kind of mental illness, or like maybe this is a way for us to process life. I think in the book, there are these funny interstitial, like handwritten, what do you call them? Messages, or it's like Joey, it's clearly intended as like Joey's notes to herself, or written on scrap paper or something. And there's one, I think, where she talks about like, if I actually had therapy, I wouldn't need this art degree.
Right.
So maybe there's some truth to the idea that like writers, maybe in addition to therapy, make their art as a kind of therapeutic exercise.
Yeah. It also feels like kind of a delusion or something, or like, I feel like mental illness might be apt. I am, you know, I have avoided getting a real job my whole life, and like, I'm just, you know, keep being like, I'm going to finish this book and then we'll, you know, I'll think about, you know, I'm a parent now, I should start worrying about money more. But after this book, I'll do it. And I think I'll just keep doing that. I think I'll just keep making excuses to write instead of like, I don't know, face the real world.
I'm 47, and I've had some variation of that exact same conversation with myself my whole life. I'm like, this is the last book. I just need to get this one done. I feel like an addict or something.
Yeah.
You know,
and there's no real reason for it that I can explain. I'm not making money, you know, in a way that I can support anybody. Like, I don't know. It's just a weird.
But let me flip it, because I think part of the reason why I do it, and why all of us do it, is that we find such solace in books as readers. I read your book and I come away from it feeling so good. Like, to read a book that really connects with you, it's impossible for me to put a book down like this one and say to myself, well, this doesn't matter, this work doesn't matter. It matters like so much. It might only matter to like one reader at a time, but it matters like in a deep way, and in a way that's not like superficial and fleeting, you know, even though the particulars of the plot might leave me, as they often do, just because my brain can't hold it all. Like, I think books make a deep mark on you, you know, especially the ones that you really connect with. And I don't know, I just like, I can't shake my belief in the importance of the work from that perspective, like from the perspective of a reader.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you're working on something you really care about. So I guess that's the whole draw, is that it's your art and you're putting yourself into it and hopefully connecting with people. I also find publishing really fun. So that's part of it.
What about it? Just the thrill of knowing that it's making its way out into the world?
Yeah, and seeing people react to it and kind of like knowing that they're in my head a little bit, or like experiencing my version of the world. That's really thrilling.
Yeah. And you must hear from people too. I mean, you hear every writer, I think, in this day and age, as long as you have a way for people to get in touch, either on social media or email, it's easier. Yeah. It's easier than ever to like reach out to a writer. And that's always nice when you hear from like a complete stranger.
Yeah, that's nice. I kind of prefer like seeing reviews and things that they're not talking to me, or like, I don't know, I don't feel the pressure to react, or like, I don't know. I like just seeing people talk to themselves about me.
Without you having to enter the conversation.
Yeah.
I'm going to read a quote from your book that I really like, that I underlined.
Cool.
It goes like this. I didn't want to stop making art, even if I didn't understand why I was making it. I didn't trust anyone who understood their own art. What was art but a way to tell people to go away forever? What was art but a one-sided argument that the artist started? What was an artist but someone who wanted to be understood but didn't know how to communicate normally?
Very good, Brad.
Do you feel like you don't know how to communicate normally?
Oh, of course. Oh my God. Yes, just listen to our old podcasts. I do not know how to communicate.
But I feel like we've come a long way. And I think too, that wanting to like fix something in writing on the page and to like get it right, that's another big part of what drives people to do this work. Like, you're obviously an articulate person who's good with language, but it's hard to nail a lot of this tougher stuff down, like the abstractions and like the fine details of, I don't know, human psychology and interpersonal exchanges and the pressures of class and familial relationships and all that kind of stuff. Like, you try to talk about that stuff and it's often just like a big mess.
Yeah, it's so complicated and hard to explain. And also, you know, your feelings change about it. I mean, mine do over the course of a conversation even. So I get just confused while I'm speaking, and it's very helpful to write it down and see it and kind of explore my own understanding of it.
Yeah, the joke that
myself.
Well, the joke that I make is like, I don't even agree with myself. Like,
right.
In the course of like one conversation, like you and I will be talking, and within a 5-minute span, I'll find myself saying something and then silently being like, I don't know why I said that.
Yeah, just talking yourself out of it. Or
yeah, I sounded like
the other side. Yeah.
But you know, I think maybe what you're trying to do when you write, or when I write, is trying to get to a point where when I look at it on the page, I find the least amount of disagreement or something, or I can like live with what's there.
Yeah. I don't even, necessarily agree with what I write, but it has to be like sound logic, I guess, to me.
It has to ring true somehow.
Yeah, or be, like true in some way.
So what about comedy? Because this is a very funny book, and you're a funny person. You have a dry delivery, so I think maybe people, you know, like you kind of have to like read Chelsea to get it, or hang out with her a lot and like get the music of her sense of humor. But you're a comedic writer to me. Like, is that how you conceive of yourself? Is that something you're aspiring towards?
It's something I'm aware of, but I'm not yeah, I don't know. It's kind of complicated. I do like being funny. I feel like it's kind of a crutch in writing, kind of like, and especially from doing readings and stuff, it's like a quick way for to like sense approval, as if someone laughs or is like, this is so funny. Um, so I think that kind of like, I don't know, my insecurity feeds on that and wants that approval. So I think that's part of it. I also think like it can be kind of a distraction from like sloppy ideas or something if you're inserting a little joke. Like it kind of, I don't know. I don't know. So I actually was trying to be less funny in this book. Like I was trying to like remove things that were just purely jokes and make it more like layered humor or something more substantial rather than just like one-offs.
It felt that way.
Cool.
I think the humor, yeah, I feel like the humor is always like earned. You know, it's not like you're never just like doing a bit. It's always like really deeply related to what's happening at a human level in the story. But it's the kind of stuff, it felt to me anyway, it's the kind of stuff that you stumble upon in the process of writing, where you're noodling with something, kind of digging around in there, and the deeper you go, you start to see the funny, or there's something that just, I don't know, just like little observational stuff, you know, that's like really deft and rings true, which like humor usually does.
Well, it's also how I get through life is trying to find the little humorous moments in the really tough spots, like just the ridiculousness of a situation or something.
Well, I was going to say, you know, it's like, it's one thing to try to distract yourself or to try to earn approval from readers or people who are listening to you read, but I think also it's a way of being attuned to like the needs of the reader and to be kind to them, especially if your book is dealing with tough stuff. Like it's kind of like the spoonful of sugar, you know, like you.
Mm-hmm. Well, also I feel like very traumatized people are usually funny, so it makes sense for Joey to have a sense of humor because she's been through so much and has to, you know, still find a way to enjoy her life.
Cope.
Yeah.
What do you read? I'm curious, like who are, I mean, I these questions sort of suck because I always draw a blank when people put me on the spot, but I'm just curious to know, like, who are some, like, in your personal pantheon of writers who have influenced you and who you sort of revere, who would make the short list?
Yeah, I always draw a blank too, and I feel like I'm not, I don't know, the people I like to read are really different from me, I feel like, as writers. But I've been into Lydia Millett and Ollie Smith, Laura Vandenberg, I don't know, which I feel like are all pretty serious writers, but have like lightness and cleverness and just kind of unexpected things happening.
Yeah. What are you drawing from them? Like, you know, I get the notion that it's like nice to read people who aren't too much like you. Like I got enough of me, you know, like I don't need to read somebody who's like reflecting my sensibility back at me all the time. It's nice to go out and be with people who are different than you are on the page. But like, what is it? Are there specific things that you're responding to? Like the cleverness, just the big intelligence?
Yeah, I guess I just like to be surprised and not know what's coming and just have a totally different experience than I would give or have usually.
And in terms of like putting this book together and getting the various parts to sort of click into place, what was the learning curve like for you, having written essays and short stories before, to get an entire novel to feel so unified? Because this book definitely feels like well honed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I admire its construction. Yeah, I admire its construction.
I think for a long time I was struggling with the voice and the tone and the structure because I had different ideas about. I think I was like pushing against my own natural voice and my natural way of writing and trying to write something that felt more like novelistic. And when I finally made the choice to do these kind of more vignette style, kind of not broken timeline. I mean, it's chronological, but it's like, you know, you jump from one scene to the next without really any explanation, pretty much every scene. Once I figured that out and realize that it's just the voice I've been writing with for years in many cases, then it felt, I don't know why I was struggling with like just accepting my voice for this book. I guess just the idea of a novel makes you think it has to read a certain way.
I feel like, yeah, I have to learn that over and over again on every project that I do.
Yeah.
Like you try to avoid yourself and then you come back to yourself eventually. That's the only way that it's going to work.
Yeah. And I also just love like the challenge of doing something completely different and want it to feel different and want it to feel like a new thing I'm doing, but it's always going to be me. And I feel like I just have to accept that I just have my voice and I'm not really going to be able to successfully stray too far from it, probably.
I feel the same way. I think there are writers who work from the outside in really well. Like they can just inhabit.
I mean, I think about it like actors who you kind of feel like they play the same character over and over, but it's different stories and different roles, obviously, but they're just kind of like playing a version of themselves that's really interesting, and they just find the characters to play that works for. I feel like that's how my approach is starting to feel. Like my characters always kind of feel like me, like a version of me, even though it's not my story. Or, I mean, at least this novel is not my story, but I put so much of myself into it and imagine myself in these experiences to pull the story off. So, yeah, I don't know.
No, I think that's right. That's actually a really good comparison, because you have like leading men or leading women, and then you have like character actors. That's the way that it's described, right? And these character actors can sort of like inhabit all these different roles, like that are completely distinct. But then like a guy like George Clooney, it's just George Clooney.
Yeah.
But he's playing
he has to have a certain kind of George Clooney-ish role.
Yeah. Otherwise it's not going to work. But yet it's totally enjoyable and noble, or at least for some people anyway. We need both, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not like one is better than the other. It's just some people are tuned different ways.
Yeah, and I think you have to accept the style that you have naturally. I don't know.
I think we always...
Or maybe you don't have to. You can keep challenging yourself. I mean, I think you should keep challenging yourself.
But I think you're right. Like, I get that you want to challenge yourself. I also have this sense that like people always want to be more and different than what they are. It's so easy to resist who you are. You're just like sick of yourself or something. But I think at some point, having that degree of like creative self-knowledge and like knowing what your strengths are and just how you're wired is probably going to serve you well, and resisting it is kind of futile.
Yeah, and I think the work will suffer if you're resisting it too much or can't accept what you're good at.
Yeah. Well,
and just go with that.
You're good at a lot of different things, because you're one of these like, polymathic creatives where you're like a good writer and you're also a really gifted visual artist. I don't know if listeners know this about you, but you can draw beautifully, and much like Joey. Why are you laughing? You can.
I'm embarrassed.
Okay, but you can. You have not. I mean, listen. You can pick up a pen and draw up, a person in your life like with alarming, well, not alarming, but like just uncanny, like accuracy and beauty. You're a gifted artist.
Thank you. I do like portraiture.
And that is something that you share with your protagonist, Joey. Mm-hmm. And what I'm interested in is hearing you talk about the relationship between your visual art life and your writing life. I've heard in the past, or like read, I think, like writers who are gifted in both ways, or maybe who like to dabble in visual art on the side, like they find it like a nice respite from maybe the rigors of writing. Like it works on different parts of the brain. Like, is there some sort of symbiosis between the two for you?
Less and less, I think. I think when I was younger, there was a lot of overlap, or a lot that I was learning from one and applying to the other. And now I feel like they're really separate. I mean, the last few years I've done art mostly for money and not really for myself. Visual art, so that feels really different. And I also, I don't know, just want it to feel really separate from my writing lately. And I yeah, I don't know. I mean, I knew I was gonna have to answer questions like this with writing a book about art and, and having like an art background, but I honestly don't. Um, I don't really consider myself that much of an artist right now, and I think, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm so busy with like being a mom and doing normal life stuff that like I've had to just cut out things from my life that don't make sense to spend time on. And I hope I get back to doing art again, but yeah, for right now, I don't feel like I get much like satisfaction from doing visual art.
Do you ever, when you're working on a book, draw like portraits of your characters to try to get like a visual of them or something? Does that help deepen your understanding of who they are?
I was thinking about it for this because I played with the idea of having art in the book and or making it a graphic novel at one point, which was a really crazy idea. But so yeah, I did some drawings of them and was like considering their appearance a lot more than I usually do.
I don't think it's that crazy of an idea for you to do a graphic novel. You could do the whole thing.
Yeah, it would have taken probably 20 years.
Oh, right. Well,
But yeah.
maybe your next book.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about something technical and writerly that I admired in this book. And I'm going to pitch it to you as a question because your experience with it might be different than mine. But as you were describing earlier, you know, this book is sort of scene by scene. I mean, I don't know. That's a dumb thing to say. All books are scene by scene, but it jumps around, you know, but there's a lovely flow to it. It's never like jarring in a way that disoriented me or anything like that. But what I want to ask you about in particular are these unconventional creative and writerly choices that you make where you'll have a more conventional scene where Joey is at art school or hanging out with some boy at a concert or whatever it is, whatever the scene happens to entail. And then the next bit in the book will be, for example, her Google search history. You know, there are these search history chapters that are very funny. You know, they sort of, it's like a recurring motif throughout the book. And it's very funny and creative. And I was like, oh, I wish I would have thought of that. Like, that's a good way to sort of investigate her character that feels like contemporary and universal. Like, we all search for weird shit online, right? It's like a fact of everyday life. I haven't seen that done in a book. Maybe I've missed it. But so there's that.
That's cool.
Or there's like a job description, like a Craigslist job description that she's clearly looking at. Or I'm trying to think of what other ones there would be. Some of them are really short. But it has that sort of collage-y effect where you're juxtaposing conventional narrative with something quick or at least in a one-for-one way, unrelated. And the question that I'm building towards has to do with how it can seem, when it's done well, like a no-brainer. Like, oh, of course this was placed next to this. But my experience as a writer is that it's actually really hard to get the fit right and to make those transitions work. Was that the case for you, or was it just kind of intuitive and it clicked and it worked like pretty much first time out?
It was mostly intuitive, but it was also a struggle to make it feel right. It feel like I approached it sort of like a collage. Like I printed out the pieces and sort of moved them around and saw how they fit together, which was really hard because also, you know, it's a chronological story, so the things have to fit together and make sense in that place. So it would be like a lot of rereading everything to make sure this one little chunk was in the right spot. But yeah, it was also like, I feel like placed to give the reader an opportunity to see Joey outside of herself a little. You spend so much time in her brain with her that it seemed like a little bit of a break to just see what she's searching for, not like what she's telling herself, but just what she's doing in the world and or what she's reading online or whatever. It seemed like a little bit of a break out of her brain, which I thought was necessary given how much anxiety she has.
I want to talk about like fate, which I think is part of her psychological struggle in the book, because her fate is turning out. She can sort of feel herself bending off from her family, her mother and her sister, both of whom seem to be struggling more than she is, or who don't maybe have the opportunities in front of them that Joey has because of this art school and the financial aid that she gets to go. The fact that she's living in San Francisco, which is, a big city with lots more going on. And also she doesn't struggle with substance in the way that her mom and sister do. Like, she drinks in the book, but I never got the sense that, like, it just seemed like normal college kid stuff. It didn't seem like problematic, like self-medication or like off the rails drinking or something. And to me, that's just kind of dumb luck in life. Like, some people are born with what I call like the allergy. They have like an allergic reaction to alcohol or drugs, and some people don't. Yeah. And then also, shit just works out for some people. And I know I've heard the counterpoint to this. Like, there's no such thing as luck. It doesn't just work out. People make things happen. I think there's some truth to that, but it doesn't feel clean to me. It doesn't feel like a clean one or the other. It feels like some weird combination, like a messy combination.
It's definitely both. It has to be both. Like, things are random. The world is random. And yeah, I think Joey is incredibly lucky and has also made choices that have put her in lucky positions. And I also think being at art school and being around rich people is just kind of a way in. Like, these people will give you opportunities, as happens to Joey, that help her, and it's nothing to them. And I think that's really real too, of just being in these like resourceful environments will just create luck, essentially.
I mean, I've had this conversation with my wife and with friends of ours about like just sending your kids to school in a place like Los Angeles. I'm like, God, I mean, I grew up in Indiana and Wisconsin and had a very lucky upbringing, so I'm not like trying to denigrate it, but it's different from growing up in a place like this. So it's a little bit like strange to imagine my kids, like, who are they interacting with? Like, they go to school, like, my daughter went to preschool with like the children of like these famous actors. Just like, what kind of youth is this? But then it's also
so weird.
It is weird, but I'm also like, well, I think I would be lying if I didn't if I didn't admit to thinking like, well, this will probably be good with her. So like, good for her, because she'll like know those people. Like when she's older, she will have known them since preschool. Like, maybe they can like help her or something. Like, you're right. I mean, it's a fact of life, and I maybe wish that it weren't so much that way. But like, you put yourself in an environment like art school where you're in contact with these privileged people, and theoretically anyway, it can open doors for you. And
I think it's way more likely. I mean, I think if Joey had stayed in Lodi, she wouldn't have had the luck she had. I mean, no one was going to swoop in and save her in Lodi.
Right. Unless she was like extraordinarily lucky.
Right. Which she could have been. I mean, it happens.
Like a vintner, a winemaker, I guess. That's like the way, that seems to be as it's described in the book. It's like you go to the wine industry when you live in this like, town. And I have to say too, since your book deals in film, at least somewhat, that as I was reading it, I could not help but think of the movie Lady Bird. Have you seen it?
Oh,
It's your book and Lady Bird are cousins, I feel like.
Yeah, that's cool. Definitely.
I had a lot of the same feelings. Like, your book is incredibly moving. It's got a big, sweet heart, and I think that's why it succeeds. Maybe that's why any like work of art succeeds. You're really rooting for Joey, and I want to read another passage from the book where she's talking about kind of the tensions in her life, where she has this pull from her mom and sister to come back home and try to help them navigate the challenges that they're facing, versus the tensions that she feels within art school, class related and otherwise, where she's looking at her friend Suze and her friend Diana and kind of coming up against their privilege, their comparative privilege, and what that means for them and what that means for her. And I think this is something that I love to see on the page, because so many of us as artists, especially if we have lesser means or lesser good fortune in some sense, we can feel like I'm fucked. Like, this isn't going to happen for me. And so I'm going to read a passage that sort of alludes to all this or talks about all this. And this is Joey narrating. It would be good if I moved home. Maybe struggling to keep up with people who are doing better than me in every way was making me miserable. Maybe I'd be happier if I wasn't trying to be happy. Maybe life would be easier if I just let it wash over me like a wave, instead of trying to claw my way out through sand in an attempt to get to a probably imaginary beach where one can supposedly view the waves of the ocean without being pummeled by them. I related to that. When you're taking on any kind of ambition, but I guess in the case of us and for the purposes of this book and this conversation, like artistic ambition, is it a fool's errand? Like, are you just making yourself miserable? Like, wouldn't you be happier if you just could live more simply and like want less?
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, wouldn't it be a lot wiser to just not give a fuck what's happening with people in your life, like your friends, whether like sitting around thinking about what they have versus what you don't have? You know what I'm saying? Like, we all torture ourselves with this stuff.
Yeah. I don't have an answer. That's like what I was exploring in the book, but I don't know. I think there's many answers, and I think, yeah, art can feel like a pointless struggle, but it's also the source of just so much beauty and like, I don't know, understanding of the world that I feel better off for trying.
Yeah, I like the idea too of like building a body of work of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think I'm obsessed with obviously recording some aspect of my life and and your life. I'm obsessed with recording your life. We've done like, this is our third episode, but I like the idea of like something tangible. Like, I was here, I tried, I was confused, here you go, like that feels good to me somehow.
Yeah.
I don't want to like lead a frivolous life, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, like you want to look back and be like, I tried. Yeah.
To make meaning.
I tried to understand myself. I tried to understand the world. I tried to create something worthwhile. And who knows if I succeeded or not, but...
Now I'm dead and I'll never know.
Yeah.
I'll let other people figure it out. Well, I think it's a big achievement. I'm wondering if is there any talk of like film rights or TV rights? I feel like this could potentially be like a limited series. I want to see an art school drama or an art school dramedy. Like,
yeah, let's do it.
I mean, you've got
you screenwrite, right?
I mean, I've dabbled. I'm not any kind of expert, but I think that this could be good material for that. Like, Joey's such a winning character, and I like to see the collision between like artistic ambition and class.
Yeah, I think it would be really fun. I hope someone wants to do that.
Would you want to screenwrite it?
I think I would want to be part of it somehow, but I mean, I'm curious about the process, but it seems also like I don't know how you would adapt it, so I think someone else with more experience should probably do it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to flesh it out or take it in some new directions, but
yeah.
Do you have another project in the works? Like, are you just enjoying sort of this moment, or are you working on something?
I've started another novel, but it's like you were saying, like just in a very messy, early idea stage. Still working out what the point is, why I feel compelled.
What does that look like? What does that look like, the messy idea stage? Or is that like you actually trying to draft, or are you just like sitting around like doodling notes or something?
It's like a Word document that's just like full of ideas about, like, some scenes are sort of fleshed out and some characters are sort of fleshed out, and then there's just a sentence of like, I think this should happen, or maybe this would happen, or maybe this character dies, or something like that. So
in a way, you're building an outline.
I guess so. Yeah.
Is that what you did for Tell Me I'm an Artist?
No. I mean, it was a similar approach. I mean, I never really get to an outline, but it's similarly like maybe like a skeleton, like starting with the basics and then fleshing it out from there.
Yeah, like a messy. It's like at best like a very messy outline.
Yeah.
Like an ideas document, but it also has some structure to it.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to like go and place things where I think they should be, but it's just such a mess. It's just like, I don't know. I feel like I need help or something. like I don't know.
Help with what? You mean
Just
help
like working. I don't know. Like I feel like I need like a writing club.
I'll be in your writing club.
You will?
Yeah, I'll read your stuff.
Okay.
I sincerely will. I sincerely will. And I think as I was reading your book, maybe the major dramatic question, or there are like two major dramatic questions for me, was like, one, what's going to happen with this Rushmore project that she's working on? And two, what's going to happen with her sister and her mom, in that like familial relationship? And I guess three, like, is she going to be able to stay in school? Mm-hmm. Because there's that question looming over her. Like, is she going to have to go back to Lodi? Like, is she going to make it,
Yeah.
And what I'm wondering creatively in particular, because I think it's hard to land a novel, I find. Like, the end is hard to make it satisfying and to feel like you've really resolved it for the reader in a manner that feels like authentic and not like patronizing or forced, It's like you want to try to like tie up everything without being too cute about it or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And as I was reading, the part that I stressed about the most, like from the perspective of like creative empathy, was like, I was like, oh, how's Chelsea going to handle this Rushmore project? Was that the hardest part to land? I felt like maybe it would be. Like maybe the personal stuff, it would be easy, but like what was the final project going to look like? And I don't think we should spoil it for readers. We'll let them read it. But I just think like it's worth talking about how you got to the final draft. Like, was it a lot of trial and error? Like, how much did you screw it up before you got it to where you liked it?
A lot. The project itself is kind of a dumb idea. So I thought, and she doesn't, she's not really that interested in it throughout the course of the novel. And so it has to be sort of a half-assed disappointing project in the end. But it's also the end of the novel, so it has to be satisfying to read, about this final project. So yeah, it was a very hard landing to make both of those things happen, where it felt like, okay, this makes sense for her project. It makes sense in a way for her growth or her development. And it also sucks and is like, you can tell no one cares. And like, she's just like, okay, well, that's done.
But I should say, and I'm not going to give away too much, but I feel like there is an emotional authenticity to it that is why it works. It's why it works maybe in the classroom to whatever degree that it does, but it's especially why it works for the reader. And I think
she's being real for like once.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like she finally, like it might be like a sloppy last minute effort, but it's her.
Yeah.
And it's her saying, like speaking from the heart or telling what's really going on with her. And that resonates with me on so many levels. First of all, it resonates with me as a former film student. I made like 2 end of semester films or end of the year films when I was in film school, like my junior year and senior year. And the first one was like in the context of film school, it was like hyper produced. Like there was a script and I found some girl on campus who was like British, who was like an actual stage actor and who like showed up on set, like feeling like she was like, we were like 19, and she felt like it was like Katharine Hepburn or something, it was like, it was very
That's so funny.
Yeah, it was really funny. She was like smoking at like 6 a.m. We were out at some like reservoir, and it was a film that was supposed to be a horror film about a woman who like drowns her ex-boyfriend's dog. It was just so bad, and it got huge laughs like in the screening. So you can imagine me like sitting there as like a pretentious like film student, thinking I'm showing everybody my horror film. I mean, I'm blushing like now, like my face is hot. And it was like, everyone afterwards was like, that was so hilarious. And it was not at all what I intended. And I was like, so humiliated.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was humiliated, like just awful. And I think it sort of like killed my confidence. Like it should have, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, And then
the next year I was a senior and I was just sort of like checked out. I just wanted to be done. And I waited until the very last minute, and I ended up doing a film where I just sat down in front of a camera and started talking and then cut it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it was like all about, and I actually read about this in my book a little bit, but it was like by far and away the thing that went over the best or something.
Probably just more raw and authentic.
That's what it was. And
Yeah.
maybe that's what, maybe there's a lesson in there. That seems like part of the lesson for Joey in the book. I related to it a lot. And kudos to you for like sort of landing the plane in all three like narrative threads. Like I feel like you landed the Rushmore, you landed the familial thing, and then you landed her sort of, at least we know what's going to happen to her a little bit in the future, at least her immediate future.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a really touching scene. I know we got to split sometime soon, but there is a really touching scene in the book where, some of the logistics of her life, like making rent, where's she going to live? And she forms this kind of relationship with a ficus tree outside her window. And I found it like really unexpectedly moving and relatable. Like how you'll come to the end of a time in your life and you can feel like a transition looming, and you'll start to attach in an unexpected way to some inanimate object, or like, I guess, a living plant or something, like something that you normally just don't even pay any attention to. Like, I think I do that. I don't know. I found the relationship between her and that damn ficus tree, like one of the most moving relationships in the book.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah. It's like this pre-nostalgic feeling of like leaving this time in her life.
But also like a kind of a lesson, like, wow, like we should be paying better attention to the stuff in our life. There can be this beautiful tree outside our window. We don't even appreciate it. And then one day we move and it's gone. I guess that's just the nature of life, but
yeah.
I love that.
Well, I'm glad the ficus tree is getting its due.
Yeah, this is its shining moment. And then
yeah.
The other thing I want to talk to you about before I let you go is the way that Joey describes like finding, like her friend, you talked about having these privileged friends who can sort of open doors for you or do things for you. It's like nothing to them. But like one of her friends in the book, and I hope I'm not spoiling too much, says to her like, oh, you can live in my apartment for the summer. Sort of helps her out. And Joey's like, this is like winning the lottery. She describes it as like feeling like she just won the lottery. And her rich friend Sue's, it's just like a no-brainer. It doesn't cost her anything. I mean, literally it doesn't cost her anything because her parents are paying for it. But
her room was just going to be empty. There was no loss for Sue's.
It made me think about, I mean, kind of to bring things around full circle a little bit, like the need for people to sort of be honest about what their needs are, or whether or not that's a good idea. Because I guess that can backfire too. If you're like talking to your rich friends at art school and suddenly you're like, I think I'm going to be homeless. Like,
yeah, right.
That might not always end
unrelatable.
That might not always end up with you getting an invitation to like stay in their room for the summer. But I guess I sort of wish it was a world where people could just sort of say what was actually happening without having to sugarcoat it or hide stuff.
Right.
Maybe that's what this book is about in some ways.
Or ask for help. I don't know. I mean, that's such a hard thing to do, is ask for help, or even identify what you need is really hard sometimes.
Have you struggled with that? I mean, have you gotten any better at that in life? Have there been times where you've, especially in the context of being a creative person, where you've actually said like, hey, I need help? And have you gotten it?
I'm trying to do that more. I think as a parent, you have to kind of more, just to have the space for yourself and not get run down. You have to ask for help with your kids. I mean, right. It's just like you have to. So I am trying to do better with that because it's just so necessary. But in general, no, I have a really hard time asking anybody for anything. And I would much rather just take on everything myself and do it and not have to burden anybody.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Well, this is a great novel. I hope you're proud of it.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Are you proud of it? Do you feel good?
Yeah, I feel good about it right now. Yeah.
Right now. Okay.
Right now.
You
Hopefully
should.
it lasts.
Yeah, you should. It's wonderfully funny and heartfelt and smart. And I think people are going to love it. And I hope that the next one happens relatively quickly. You know, I know you're in the early stages, but like, don't wait too long.
Yeah.
And
you too.
Yeah, good luck with Casper and all that, you know, goes into parenting a child with epilepsy. I know what that's like. But I love to see your face and to talk to you, and I'm happy to help you celebrate this great book. So kudos to you. Good luck with it all. Keep in touch, and I wish you well.
Thank you so much, Brad.
All right, there we go. That was Chelsea Martin. Her new novel, Tell Me I'm an Artist, is available now from Soft Skull Press. You can find Chelsea Martin on the internet at cacadolce.com. You can follow her on Twitter at Chelsea_Martin. She's also on Instagram. One more time, the book is called Tell Me I'm an Artist. Go get your copy right now. Do yourself a favor. The Other People podcast is on the internet. The official website for this show is otherppl.com. You can follow it on Twitter at otherppl, and the show also has an Instagram feed. I believe the handle is at otherppl.podcast. If you would like to email me, if you want to send word, the email address for this program is letters@otherppl.com. letters@otherppl.com. Don't forget to sign up for the weekly newsletter. Once a week, it happens. You can sign up for the newsletter. It's free over at otherppl.com or bradlisti.com. Same newsletter in either place. Don't forget as well to rate and review this podcast wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, what have you. Rate it and review it. Take a couple of minutes. It really helps the cause. Likewise, I hope you will support the show if you are able. You can do that for as little as $1 a month. Just drop $1 into the hat every month. Help me keep this thing going. Go to Patreon, patreon.com/otherpplpod. Patreon.com/otherpplpod. Support the show. The Other People podcast has its own YouTube channel. Did you know that? If you're a YouTube person, you can listen to the entire archive of this podcast on YouTube. So here's how you find it. Go to YouTube, search for the show by name, Other PPL with Brad Listi, and when you find the channel, subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. It's free. The Other People podcast has its own official app. I'm not sure if you were aware of that. I want to make you aware. The Other People app is free. It's a great way to listen, so go get the Other People app wherever you get your apps. Next week on the program, I'm going to be talking with A.M. Holmes about her terrific new novel, The Unfolding. So stay tuned for that. Appreciate you guys listening. Hope everyone is doing all right out there. All right? And I will talk to you again soon.